Hello, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining our webinar on the open source landscape, the benefits, considerations on the benefits, the security, and the community. Thank you so much for joining. I see lots of folks in our attendee list, which is great. I am pretty sure all these folks are from various places around the world. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Right, why don't we get started? My name is Simeon Oriko. I am the Director of Community at the Mojaloop Foundation. We have started off a new series of webinars to speak about topical issues that we hear from our adopter community and the wider Mojaloop ecosystem. One of those hot topics is on the question of open source. And this webinar is designed to give you people a deeper understanding on open source and just get a deeper insight into some of the key issues surrounding open source. In this webinar, we'll focus on some of the primary benefits of open source as it applies to an instant and inclusive payment system. We'll talk about the security, we'll talk about the community. Most of you are aware that open source has been around for decades, and open source literally powers a huge chunk of the infrastructure of the internet and the services that rely on the internet. And this is across various industries, various organizations. It is certainly has delivered a lot of immeasurable value as a development tool. This is a value that we think can drive the creation and adoption of instant and inclusive payment systems. However, there do remain some hesitations or some challenges when utilizing these tools. And so that's why we have created this webinar, just to begin to address a few of them that are listed on your screen there for you. The advantages, the benefits in the context of an instant and inclusive payment system, such as Mojaloop. The importance of having a robust open source community behind your open source instant and inclusive payment system, and security considerations in an open source IIPS. Today, I will be moderating this panel. The other participants are very active and valuable members of the Mojaloop community. We have Jane Stroken, who is the Senior Program Manager at Infitex. We've got Elijah Okelo, the Chief Technology Officer at AlphaJiri. And we've got Sri Miriala, who is a Quality Assurance Lead at Infitex. All these folks are on the screen. It's really glad to have you all here. And thank you so much for taking the time to take this deep dive with us. Right, so we will begin with Jane Stroken, who will briefly talk through the benefits for government and organizations. So I will quickly pass it to Jane. Jane?
Can't get off mute. For some reason, I've lost my mute button.
We can hear you, Jane. Go ahead.
Hear me? Oh, okay. I thought I was on mute. Sorry. So hello, everyone. Welcome. And thanks for joining us. So I just wanted to remind us all what open source software is. Obviously, it refers to, not obviously, but it does refer to any software where the source code is open for public scrutiny. It's maintained via open collaboration and made available to anyone to inspect and modify and adopt. This allows users to customize it according to their needs instead of buying out-of-the-box software or building new software. I have to find the button and it has disappeared for some reason. There it is. There we go. So I thought we could just initially look at some misconceptions around open source software, because it is an area that is carries with it a bit of uncertainty and a bit of wobbly feelings around it. So the first one is, do cyber criminals have free access to it, and obviously then it becomes insecure or unsecure and problematic. And yes, true, cyber criminals do, but they also are able to access proprietary and vendor-supported software. So where there is a will, there's a way, and they will find a way into any system. So why are we so sure that Mojaloop open source is safe? My colleague Shri will touch in a bit of detail on the specific security aspects around it. But I think what you'll also come to see is that software that belongs to a community that's developing, supporting, and maintaining the outputs of their efforts is fiercely guarded and wrapped in best practice security and processes that ensure that as few gremlins as possible make their way into the code. So we're pretty confident about the fact that it's not as vulnerable as perception would have us believe. Open source projects aren't maintained regularly. Well, this community is shepherded by the Mojaloop Foundation, and that ensures that behind the software there is a core team of contributors that maintain the source code at all times. So that's not a problem. Keeping track of source code changes, well, processes are critical. And at the Mojaloop Foundation, we have best practice engineering and release management processes as a principle behind the running of this code. So we try to make sure that we can keep track of any change that's available, and we guard against random things going into the source code. Open source projects get abandoned. Well, lots of things get abandoned in life, but the values and drive behind the purpose of this particular build is based on the level 1 project and forms part of the reasoning for sustaining this project. Of course, a vendor product can, with the license they can go bankrupt, or they can stop doing upgrades, or I think there are problems in any world where things are moving as fast as software does. But there is, we certainly believe there's no chance that this is going to get abandoned in a hurry, and the code is there. And once you have used it, you have a vested interest in ensuring that you maintain it and you keep being part of this community. Incompatibility, poor documentation, and insufficient support. Well, participation tools, continuing improvement, development of the documents is an ongoing part of the work that the foundation does with the support of the community and that the community participates in. So this open source code, it's never perfect, but it is building a library of really good supportive documentation, good supportive resources that are available to help anybody starting up or continuing to use the product. Contributors not always following best practices. Well, I think I've touched on that already. That is a firm principle in the foundation, and the foundation governs everything to do with this source code. So I think we're in fairly safe hands there from that perspective. So what are the benefits? In thinking about it, I thought most of the benefits that I can come up with there's a couple of points about them, but they're applicable to both governments and companies. So I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and it applies in all instances. You will also notice that the benefits it's almost a snowball effect. The one is dependent on the other, the one benefits from the other, the one expands on the other. So as I go through these, you will come to notice that because of the point before, the next point is relevant, and there is a continuing stream of benefits. So, we're going to touch on a few. Independence and control. I think sovereignty is a huge issue for any owner of financial services related software. And it should be an issue. But open source software in particular gives governments and grants companies and governments sovereignty over that software. And by using open source solutions, the users have access freely to modify the code, work with it in a way that is giving them results that they are specifically looking for and satisfying their needs. It also helps to avoid dependencies on external entities, and that's both in terms of support and in terms of proprietary solutions, which brings us to the next point, which is vendor neutrality and lock-in to very hefty licensing and things like that. So being able to access code yourself allows you to not obviously get caught up in those lock-in situations, but it also gives you access to other minds, other viewpoints, other ways of working with your code and your software and any changes or expansions you want to make with people who have insight that is not necessarily tainted by bias associated with being a vendor. And we all know any vendor in any situation will always lean towards something that expands their cell or pulls you in a direction that locks you further in. So the advantage of using this particular open source and any open source in fact is the access to unbiased advice, as unbiased as it can be, because we're all a little bit biased, but also giving you the authority and power to move through decision making with a wide variety of inputs from external or people within the community. From a security and trust perspective, because there is transparency in open source projects, there is a view of the reasons behind people's contributions. There isn't a behind closed doors scenario and then stuff is just handed out and you have to accept it. There is a way to add your voice in, to give your input and get feedback. You can see the source code, you can see what it is you are concerned about, and you can perform security audits, you can do anything you need to do and give your feedback into the community. Now, from a security perspective, Shri, my colleague, is going to touch on that, as I said earlier. But all of this sort of preparation and these points around the benefits that are being given to us is a development of trust in a community, and the power of that trust is fantastic. From a cost and efficiency perspective, a cost efficiency and budgeting perspective, the fact that you're not paying massive licenses for somebody else to come and tell you something that one of your resources probably could at some point get to understand is huge, because it enables you to take your budgetary allocations and assign it in areas where you understand there is a need for growth. So you can get the skills you need in order for you to work with this particular source code and enhance it and feed back into the community and give back and grow the benefit of what you have. And being able to hire skills that work for you, being able to feed those skills back into the local communities back into the country's economy and so on is a massive benefit for everybody involved in the open source community. And lastly, the growth of expertise is massive, and we've seen it so much in the Mojaloop Foundation, how newcomers into the community, and there's one actually on the panel with me now, who's been through the process of learning, of participating, and has now become an incredibly valuable contributor. And that only bodes well for the local economies, particularly in emerging markets like we work in and live in, at building local talent, fostering innovation, expanding the country's economy, the country's future, the people's opportunities, because without expertise that is shared globally, people's opportunities do not grow. That benefit of the community collaboration is something that Elijah's going to expand on quite a lot in a moment, and I'm going to hand it over to him now and allow him to give his experience and his understanding of the role of community. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us. My name is Elijah Okello, and I'm CTO at Alphagiri. I'm going to be talking about why it is important to, adopt an open source project that has a robust community, behind it. For starters, I think it's important to understand what a community can contribute to an open source project. So, as you consider using open source software, one of the most important things to evaluate is the community of contributors that are supporting the project. When it comes to open source, the health of a community determines so much, and it plays an outsized role in the success of a project. As we go through this discussion, I'm going to show you the benefits of a robust open source community. And in the context of the Mojaloop community, I definitely, from my experience, I joined this community when I was still in not in high school. I was in the university and college, and I grew a lot because of the kind of community members that are present, people that are available to mentor, and I understood a lot about the project. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the validation of open source that is present in the world as we speak today. So the FinTech Open Source Foundation, which is FINOS for short, released a report, and 87% of the global financial service companies consider open source valuable for the future of the industry. And if you want to dig into this report, please, you can use that link and check it out. But this is not information or a report that is published by the Mojaloop Community or Foundation. This is information that is out there that has been published by people who have a huge stake in open source. As you can see, the logos are put out here. These are companies that are using open source at a very high level to, perform their business functions, support operations, do so many things that they want to achieve in their different spheres of influence. And this is not just something that would make you feel good about open source. It's actual validation that open source, in fact, has a lot of value to the financial industry. So if you'd like to go deeper into this research, please, you can look at that link that I put there in the slide. The next thing I'd like to talk about are the merits of a robust open source community. Now, there are so many benefits of having a community, even just for something that is not open source, right? A community that is robust supports an open source initiative in so many ways. Some ways that we've probably not even thought about, and by no means is this an exhaustive list of all the benefits or the merits of a robust open source community. I'd like to talk about innovation. So innovation is something that is that will definitely come naturally out of a community of people who are constantly thinking about something, talking about it, having meetings about it, discussing about it. There are so many problems that need to be solved in the financial technology space. One of the reasons as why the Mojaloop project was implemented and instantiated based on the level 1 principles. There's going to be constant discussion about the different problems that we're trying to solve, and innovative ideas are going to come out of those discussions on how to solve them. This is different from proprietary software. By no means am I saying that proprietary software does not have innovative ideas. I'm just saying that the level of innovation that comes out of a robust open source community backing up an open source project is going to be way more different compared to a proprietary software. And that's why we see a lot of companies, like in the previous slide I shared, a lot of companies are jumping onto open source because the people that are supporting these open source projects are so many, they are so diverse, and so they're going to bring ideas from all over the world. The other point I'd like to talk about is project evolution and growth. This is natural because a lot of eyes are looking at the project, and they're going to have a lot of things to say about the project's growth, the project's state at the moment, the way it is. The industry in which we are, which is software development, is a constantly evolving field. So to keep the project up to speed with the standards of the world, even security standards, there's definitely going to have to be evolution of the project and changing of the way things are done to make sure that it's just as secure, just as fast, and meet the quality standard. There's also collaboration. Collaboration is a very fundamental aspect of open source communities, and this is in the heart of open source. It is literally at the center of everything that we believe in as open source enthusiasts. I'd like to give an example. The Mojaloop community, we have public forums on which we communicate. We have GitHub repositories. We have a source code of the projects the project that we maintain is. We have a community, portal where we can talk about things and post information that is important to everyone. These different things are the enablers of collaboration. We also have a Slack workspace where we have discussions about different things. There are so many channels that are geared to addressing different problems. All these things that I've talked about are part and parcel of the Mojaloop community, and all these are geared towards making sure that collaboration is happening in the community, and this is a benefit of having a community that is robust. The other one I'd like to talk about is transparency. Open source communities require transparency. The decision-making process, project roadmap, and governance structure should be open and accessible to all participants. Transparency builds trust and encourages participation. If you'd like to know about how the Mojaloop community is run, and you feel like you have an input on the management process or anything, there is something that I like about the community meetup events, is that one day in the meetup, every person in the community gets an opportunity to influence the roadmap for the next project increment. And so that definitely gives a very valuable opportunity to anyone who is invested in this project to, let me say, introduce a new feature that they want in the project. So at that point is when you will actually raise up your hand and say, I maybe want this to be implemented in the project. So there's a lot of transparency in the way we do things, and everything that we do, even the priorities that we have right now, are public and available for everyone to look at. Meritocracy is something that I'd also like to talk about. Open source communities often follow a meritocratic model where contributors are evaluated based on the quality of their input rather than personal factors. So I contribute to the open source project inside Mojaloop, in the Mojaloop community. I contribute to Mojaloop. And so whenever I make pull requests to any branches or any repositories that have source code, there's going to be like a whole discussion on the rationale of why I made certain decisions to implement the software. And there will come a lot of criticism, which is constructive. It's good for the project because it makes sure the project is getting the best. So there is a lot of meritocracy that is followed in producing the software. There's a lot of eyes looking at it. There is a lot of scrutiny that goes in the process of allowing software to go into the official release. And if there's something that someone does not like, they will actually mention it out, and a process will be put in place to rectify it. Inclusivity and diversity is also a very important value that comes out of a robust open source community. A strong open source community values inclusivity and diversity. It actively encourages contributors from people with diverse backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. I am from Kampala, Uganda, and I'm contributing to the Mojaloop project. This is not something that is very common with proprietary software. If I were going to contribute to an instant payment system software that is not open source, I'd probably have to get a job in the company that builds a project and, you know, go through so many interviews, which is most times very hard. And it just speaks to the level of inclusivity and diversity that an open source community can give. So anyone from anywhere in the world can have a stake and have an opportunity to contribute to this project. There is effective communication through the different public channels that we have. And the other point is documentation. Whatever we do in this open source community is documented to make sure that in the future, when someone comes to look up something or, you know, read up and get up to speed to the point where they can contribute, there is documentation. So documentation is a huge benefit that comes with a community that is robust. Code quality and reviews. I talked about this earlier, that there's going to be a lot of peer reviews that happen before any source code is committed into the main project, the main repositories that store the release, the stable version. So there's a lot of code quality and reviews that go on before that happens. There is support and mentoring. I'm a testament to this because when I joined the community, I had a lot of support, and so it was just a lot of support, but it ended up to become mentoring. So there was no real mentoring relationship, but because I'd ask questions and I'd get answered, would get on calls and talk about things, slowly by slowly, I kept on, growing, and it was just mentoring in the long run. And I have learned a lot in the process. This is only possible if an open source project has a proper community backing it. And this is one of the points that actually really speaks to our robust open source community. In which case, the Mojaloop community is quite robust and it has so many people. In the community, there's going to be a regular release cycle because whenever something is found or users of the project raise up any issues, fixes will be put in place and the project will have a release constantly. Licensing and intellectual property. Now, open source projects are very good at this. They have very clear licensing schemes. They have well-documented licenses in their project repositories. Open source communities adhere to a clear licensing model, and this facilitates sharing and modification of the source code. So open source licenses are not restrictive. They are not as long as proprietary licenses, so they're easier to read. And even if you don't read it, there's not much restriction that is in there. Last but not least, I'd like to point us to the Mojaloop Communities Forum. This is a link to the Mojaloop Communities Forum where you can find information on different posts about what is happening in the community, posts from the product council, from the different committees that we have that are running the community, but also you can weigh in on the different things that you feel are important to you, and people will definitely reach out to you because the community is very active. Yes, I guess that's it for me. Sri will now talk about security in open source. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone. My name is Shri. I've been I've been working as a QA lead with Infotech Technologies, and I've been involved in Mojaloop and its implementations for the past 6 years. So yeah, I will go over my experience, and I'll go over the security features of the Mojaloop today. Let's start. Before going into the security features, security mechanisms in the Mojaloop, I would like to go over general security considerations among the open source financial systems. Yeah. I put together some of the security considerations in the open source financial systems. One would expect confidentiality, integrity, and the end-to-end security of the messages. Also, the regulatory support one would be expecting in the open source financial systems, especially when it is coming to the dealing with the finances. So the end-to-end security of the messages is very important. These are all the in the coming slides, I'm going to talk about how these considerations are addressed in Mojaloop security mechanisms. So as with any software application, the software will be developed, built, and deployed in multiple phases. So I'm trying to show some of those phases pictorially here. As you see, from the leftmost is the coding phase, where the product will be developed. So I will start from this phase. So once this is developed, the general security mechanisms during these phases, in each and every phase, I have put together here. I won't go through I'm not planning to go through in details of these security mechanisms that we used, but how they are acting in each and different phases of the software product, from the development and all the way to the application runtime. And I would also like to talk about some of the external connection securities, which means it is not just the hub and the participants that are to connect to the hub also secured. So when a code is developed, there are certain security that we are following, like before it gets checked into the GitHub. GitHub is the repository that we use, the code repository that we use. Before it gets checked in, we check for the vulnerability checks and any dependency checks. And once it is in the GitHub, one needs to raise a PR towards that, or whatever the part of code that they implement. And a code owner needs to review that PR and make sure that there are no duplications, and there are some pre-commit checks also. So each and individual repository has some rules defined. So that specific code has to meet all of those rules before it gets checked into the actual repository on the GitHub. So, and I'm sorry, what happened? Samyan, can you please help?
Sure, 1 second.
The main. Thank you so much, Samyan. So yeah, we are here, right? So it goes through a thorough review process by the authorized code owners, and only then it will be merged into the main branch. So once that code is ready to be built, that is where the software supply chain comes into picture as part of the CI/CD pipeline. Some of the checks that are implemented as part of these processes are, again, any vulnerabilities for the dependencies are checked here thoroughly, and also the container images that are generated, they will also be scanned again for any vulnerabilities. So in addition to that, there are audit license checks to make sure that the appropriate license are being used and applied in that specific places wherever it is needed. And the last one is the Sonar Cloud. This is the code quality and security analysis tool, cloud-based. This is what we are using. This automatically reviews the PRs for any security checks and also duplication of the code. It helps a lot, actually. And whenever there is a duplication of the code, I get the emails, and whoever is subscribed to that, they will get the email saying that, hey, so-and-so repo has the duplication code. So that specific developer, whoever raised the PR against that repository, that developer can immediately take an action into it. So this is very helpful. And now that the code artifacts are built, the next stage is the deploying in an environment. So we will be talking about the different security mechanisms in place, what we have for this runtime in here. At this point, we also will be talking about the participants that are going to connect to the hub will be exchanging the messages with Mojaloop. I mean, those are the parties who will be exchanging the messages with the Mojaloop hub. So I will also go over a little bit on that. So the very first security mechanism in place in here is the transport level security, where a party is sending messages to the hub. That message is encrypted with mutual TLS, which means, I will go over what it is later. So that is the first mechanism. And coming to the application level, from the authentication standpoint, OAuth is used. So for example, there are, let me go to the next slide, that will be a little bit pictorial. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. So OAuth, right, I was talking about. So any DFSP that is sending messages to the hub. So these are the digital financial service providers. It could be mobile wallets or merchants, anything it could be. So those who are connected to the hub are sending the messages, right? So they are going to have an OAuth token to get authenticated, and those tokens are refreshed on periodic basis to make sure that they are not tampered in. That is about the OAuth. And the other security mechanism that we are using are the JWS signatures, which is Java Web Signatures here. These are the signatures that are shared between the DFS space, and Hub also will be having a, not the Hub, sorry, the public keys will be shared, and the private key will be within the DFS space. So those are the technical details. I will refer them later. But for now, JWS is another level of application layer security mechanism that we are using. This is to ensure that there is no man in the middle attacks that will be tampering the messages, because as these messages will moving across the internet before they reach the hub. So yeah, these are all the security mechanisms from the communication standpoint. And when it comes to actual security, a transfer security, the actual transfer that happens between the two DFSPs through hub, this is also called, there is a interledger protocol, which is the condition and the fulfillment that ensures the authenticity of the messages is adhered to between the prepare and the fulfillment and the commit stages. Means there are two stages. Once the DFSP, once the payer initiates the transfer, then the payee needs to confirm that transfer. So that is called the prepare and the commit steps. So there is a particular thing that the interledger protocol thing, condition and the fulfillment, that needs to be satisfied between these two steps so that the transfer will be completed. So apart from this, we also have some checks and balances against from the hub operator standpoint. For example, this whole thing will be deployed on the on an environment where that needs to be accessed through VPN, and also firewalls and IP filterings are in place. So only the hub allows the messages through those whatever the IP ranges that the DFSP or the parties provide before connecting. So those are all the part of onboarding steps. When the participants are about to connect to the hub, they provide all that information. So even for that, we have a portal, MCM, Mojaloop Connection Manager, we call it, where the DFSPs can create their own profiles in there, and also generate the certificates and pass those certificates and generate the JWS keys, and all that is there. And there is a portal for the business operations as well. And the other portals for the DFSPs are also available. They're still in the review phases. So with all these portals, it is very convenient to onboard any participants that are trying to send the transfers through this platform. So basically that ensures that the traffic is only coming from the authorized sources, that whatever the IP filters that I have mentioned, VPN and the IP filtering. So make sure that the traffic is only coming from the authorized sources. So here I want to pick one of the important things. Let's go to the next slide. So these are all the public infrastructure best practices. There is a lot to go over with all of these, but I would like to pick one among them, which is the certificate authority. So before, in the previous slide, I have spoken about exchanging the certificates and JWS keys and everything, right? Which comes, sorry, the certificate part comes under MTLS, where it is called the mutual TLS. As part of that, to exchange certificates, there should be a trusted party so that the DFSPs comfortably, the DFSPs, I'm calling the word DFSP, which is digital financial service providers, or we can also call the participants. So who are trying to connect, they can exchange the certificates in a trustworthy way. So that is when this public infrastructure comes in place, with the CA certificates. There has to be a trusted CA that will be issuing the certificates and also rotating those certificates so that there will not be any tampering of those certificates. So apart from that, there are a lot of best practices that we have listed in here, and these are all part of the Mojaloop security implementations, and the technical details of this certainly we can go through, but maybe in a different call. So all this, whatever the security mechanisms that I have put in place in here, the about the application layer security or the environment related security, where everything is deployed and the participants are trying to connect. This is not something that could happen in a day, right? So this has, so security is embedded in the Mojaloop from the day one, which is the foundation phases, where I would say now the last PI is the 24th PI. The next one is the 25th PI. So from PI 1, product increment 1 onwards, it is embedded in the application itself. In the PI 128, we have in the architecture itself, for example, the ILP fulfillment condition, whatever I have mentioned in here. So that is, that went into the architecture phase itself in the PI 128. Those are the initial phases of the product. And there is also another security feature, which is called a block transfer. That is not something like this one. That is a feature where a finance provider can set this is the maximum limit that we would like to transfer per day, something like that they can set up, so that at least that also saves, at least the amount wise, the limit on the amount it sets. So if anyone wants to, or if that limit is exceeding, the hub will stop the transfer, saying that, hey, your limit is exceeded. So that is another security feature within the code itself, within the Mojaloop application itself. Yeah, that is through PI 128, and in PI 9, we focused on PI 9 onwards, we focused on closing the gaps basically, and introduction to risk and threat driven approach, and moving the whatever the code has been developed, moving all that to the production in a secured way. So that is what we planned around the PI 9 onwards. I'm just pointing the important milestones, not everything that happened through the PIs. And in PI 14 to 16, again, we focused on FRMS, fraud and risk management systems, and setting some guidelines around it, and the documentation part, and open source scannings, quarterly scans and reports, and security testing and validations. And also we have started DevOps, security in the DevOps process as well. So that is what had happened through the different product increments. The goal of the secured Mojaloop is delivering a trustworthy platform that meets the market demands by embedding security into the core application, as also aligning with the best practice industry standards, which I mentioned them here, to minimize the risk and data breach, and also to prevent the potential reputational risks. That's the goal. And whatever we have discussed about different layers of security in different phases, from coding and all the way to the application running and maintenance, the links are provided here. The standards and the best practices, everything is mentioned in these links, if anyone would like to take a look. Yeah, and security is not something that can be done. It's a continuous process. So yeah, we are here to help with that if any of the understanding is needed, or for any questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sri, and Jane and Elijah for breaking down the various aspects of open source around an inclusive and instant and inclusive payment system. For our attendees and for everyone, we do want to thank you for joining us. One of the things that I hope you're able to see is that when it comes to open source, there are certainly many benefits for potential adopters, be they governments or organizations or private entities. There is utility value in having a community being able to support you through your journey from determining certain principles or basic fundamentals of an IIPS, an instant inclusive payment system, all the way to developing it, all the way to customizing it. And there are many people in one of the constitutions, and the benefits of open source is having these people who are able to support you in that journey. People who are expertise, who are knowledgeable, who've done it several times before, who have a resource, a knowledge pool that can be tapped from. But we've also seen the value that best open source security practices can add to an instant inclusive payment system such as Mojaloop. We have gone deep dive to show you within the Mojaloop ecosystem for the Mojaloop product what that looks like, in order to give you a bit of confidence over the open source product that Mojaloop as an IIPS is. That said, we're just coming up to the end of our time, and I do want to thank you all for participating and joining here. Perhaps you may have questions or you have a follow-up and want to do a bit more of a deep dive on any of these topics. Feel free to write us at info@mojaloop.io. That is info, info @mojaloop.io. We'd be more than happy to share with you the benefits of open source for your IIPS considerations. We'd be more than happy to share with you how the Mojaloop community works and operates and is structured, and how that supports adopters and potential adopters in their journey towards getting an IIPS. We are also more than willing to go down into the details explaining the security considerations. Now, while these are some primary aspects, there may be other open source aspects that you may have questions about. The Mojaloop community has extensive resources in terms of knowledgeable people, some written materials that we'd be happy to share. So if you want to reach out to us, we'd be more than happy to share that information with you. For now, thank you all so much. In case you would like this recording, we will be sharing it on YouTube, and we'll post a link. And we will also be sharing a survey right after this call. So please do consider filling it out. There are many more webinars planned in the coming weeks and months. So do stay tuned on our social channels. That's Mojaloop, wherever you get your social fix. And also consider subscribing to our newsletter. You can do that on our website, mojaloop.io, and you will be updated on future events. Thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your day, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you, everybody.